All right, that's more like it. My name's Aaron Crowell. I'm the managing editor of HorrorHound magazine. With me is Nathan Hanneman.
Hello.
Editor-in-chief of HorrorHound magazine. And Freddie Morris from Night of the Living podcast and HorrorHound Radio. And all three of us are HorrorHound Radio. Sadly, Jason Cretton could not join us. And Nathan may have to run out of here because he's juggling a lot of stuff today.
I won't run.
He might have to. He's going to try to stay. So,
Unless the fire department shows up.
yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to interview two celebrities today, and we're not going to ask run-of-the-mill questions. How many of you are familiar with HorrorHound magazine and read HorrorHound magazine? Show of hands.
Yay.
How many people know HorrorHound is a magazine? All right, awesome. We're on the right track then.
How many still read magazines at all?
Well, yeah. Oh, man, I hope to see more hands than two for that answer. So, anyway, we have a column in the magazine called 10 Random Questions with a Director. And what we do is we just try to have fun and kind of tease some interesting information out of them about themselves. So what we'll do is we'll get through our questions, and then we'll open it up to you all so you can ask them some questions as well.
Wait, who made these questions?
Freddie.
Freddie, you son of a bitch. No.
Hey! There it is.
You gotta stand like this the whole time.
Yeah, most of these questions were from they were stolen from the Colbert questionnaire. If you watch the Late Show, and these are these questions which he stole from someone else, so it's okay. But we kind of changed them a little bit to make them, thank you, a little more specifically HorrorHound appropriate. Some of them are still just stupid questions, but they're pretty good.
And I guess we need to play our intro because it's appropriate.
Right. So we're sticking with like the high rent production thing that we like to do. I'm just going to play you our opening music from my phone into this microphone.
Welcome, boils and ghouls. You're listening to HorrorHound Radio with Aaron, Jason, and Freddie.
And Nathan.
High tech. But yeah, we do this, what'd you say, about every issue we try to record an episode of HorrorHound Radio?
Yeah, we try to get at least one episode, if not two, a month. That's been the plan. So since we've been back, we took a big break, sadly. We didn't want to, but things happen.
There's this great drill down. Aaron does these, he'll come in with these lists that are like 20 pages long of like gore movies and stuff that's just so obscure. And he knows everything on the list. But if you like every time I listen, I'm sitting in the room listening to the HorrorHound Radio, as it's happening. And Aaron is just like, God, I leave with 4 or 5 movies I have to watch before I can come back and talk to you again.
You can just ignore them, too.
It's hard. It's hard because he's too passionate. He's just like, no, Nose Picker is really good.
It is.
Is it?
It is.
It's good. But you turned me on to Girls' Night Out, which I had never seen with Hal Holbrook, and his son was in that, and I thought that movie was just... And it's a weird movie that not a lot really happens in. It's kind of a Halloween ripoff, but then they have this whole soundtrack by the Lovin' Spoonful. Yeah. And I'm like, how did they even make that happen? I don't know, but I would have never seen
and
that.
A high school mascot slasher with steak knives sticking out of his costume.
He's dressed like a bear.
Too much fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, one of our goals on HorrorHound Radio is to try to turn people onto new movies, help people find horror films they didn't know about. We like to do a lot of stuff like going to like shock films and, like Freddie said, gore films, history of gore, and censorship. So if you don't listen to HorrorHound Radio, check us out. Hopefully you enjoy it. Anyway, are we ready?
What we don't do is interview celebrities on the
I know.
on the thing.
Yeah. That's just
And that's because sometimes they have to sign a few more autographs before they come out.
Oh, yeah. Well, when that happens, we'll do something fun. Freddie, what's something that's fun to talk about?
You mean like right now, man?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I would say the number of awesome cosplay I've seen here. Like the Ed and Lorraine Warren. I don't know if you've seen those.
There's an Elaine Warren walking around.
There's an Ed and Lorraine Warren, both with an Annabelle, like in a holy like.
One of our staffers refused to get on the elevator with the Annabelle.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
I was on the phone with him, and he just goes, "Oh, I ain't doing that." And I'm like, "What just happened?" He's like, "There's an Annabelle on the elevator."
What you should start doing is with your staffers, you could do, remember on the old Maury Povich show? Is this too old for most of the people here to know? No, you guys know what Maury Povich is. But he used to make people confront their fears, and they'd bring a spider out.
Oh my God, I remember that.
Yeah,
That was amazing.
You should start doing that here. You could have you just torture
Is
volunteers.
it HorrorHound Fear Factor Edition? Is that what it would be called?
It would be, kind of like a fear factor, but it could be like, spend time with a doll. You don't have to eat bugs or anything. Nothing blatantly abusive or horrible, but I think
Why
it'd
not?
be pretty great. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's a horror convention. You can get the Terrifier people up here to come up with some stuff, some ideas.
All right, without no further ado. Well, we'd like to welcome our first guest, which should be no surprise. He is the voice of the Crypt Keeper. He's done a lot of amazing voice work, and John Kassir.
Woo!
Hello, creeps. What a
You're
great
amazing.
turnout. Thank you guys for coming today. I got more waters. There was a really weird thing that just happened in the elevator. An animal wouldn't get on with me.
We were just discussing
It's a
elevators.
callback joke. No, I'm just kidding.
Now, will you get on an elevator with an Annabelle doll?
Male or female?
We're not going to answer that right here,
I
right
think
now.
they're both, right? Aren't they?
Annabelle, man. I don't get it. It's just, I'm not real scared of Annabelle, but, like the doll itself. But like the whole idea that many people can be scared of Annabelle scares me.
Yeah. It's amazing what people find scary. I mean, the most amazing thing about Tales from the Crypt was that it started back with the comic book. Here, let me take this off. I had one of my own face, but it was much scarier. But I'm type 1 diabetic, so my deal with my wife is if I go to these events, I have to wear my mask. So it's an easy compromise because I love seeing you all. It's amazing because I grew up on those comic books as a kid, and then to have people come up to me now and go, "Oh, it's my childhood," and I'm like, this was not a show for kids, but it was a show for kids. I mean, I was proof of that, the fact that the comic book was, for kids. And if you have the opportunity and you have the box set to look at the Behind the Screams DVD, it talks all about how controversial those comic books were back in the day. I mean, literally, they went to Congress and said they caused juvenile delinquency. You need to get these banned. And as a result, to this day, you see age codes on comic books because of the EC Comics, with Tales from the Crypt comic books and Tales from the Dark, all these Two-Fisted Tales, Tales from the Vault kind of comic books, and that was me. I mean, I used to hide them in my Casper comics. My mom thought I was reading a Casper comic, and
I still read them in bed at night. I
It's
do,
amazing, right?
like a little boy, and it takes me
Excellent.
right back there.
one day Annabelle will pop out of the comic book, and there you'll be. But it's funny because people will go, "Oh, it scared the shit out of me. It was so scary." What kid's not going to see the Crypt Keeper, hear that voice, and not stop at the TV and want to watch that? Whether it scares you or not. It's like when somebody goes, your friend goes, "Oh, let's go on that roller coaster." You're like, "I'm not going on that thing." And then you finally go on a roller coaster, and you're like, "I want one bigger. I want one scarier." And that's kind of like what the Crypt Keeper was. And so I'm just shocked how many, literally, I didn't even used to do conventions at all because, I thought the show had, there really weren't very many conventions back in the day when it first started. And so I thought, it's come and past. People aren't going to want to see me. And then I'd go to these conventions with friends or something, and people would go, "Can I have your autograph?" I go, "For what?" "Tales from the Crypt," and I would do that. And it just got more and more and more till now it has 3 generations of people whose parents let them watch the show, or didn't let them watch the show, or threatened to make them watch the show if they didn't do their homework, or wouldn't let them watch the show if they didn't do their homework. Or
And then you're on Solar Opposites.
that's it. Oh my God.
What a great way to bring that character back.
Oh my God, it was so funny. All of you who didn't see it, a lot of you know that I did Rick and Morty as a character called Blim Blam, who was just a bizarre space alien with space AIDS. I don't know what that means, but that's what he had. But just a whacked out character. And so they called me and said, "Listen, we're doing Solar Opposites, and we want to do a Halloween special, and we want to do a take on the Crypt Keeper. We'd love for you to come in and do it." I was like, "Oh, great." I said, "So what do you want to do?" I'm the Crypt Keeper. They were like, "Oh, yeah, we want it as fast as possible." Blah, blah. I go, "The Crypt Keeper doesn't really talk that fast." They go, No. We want to be like the Crypt Keeper, but he's the irritating little brother that won't shut up." So I came up with this kind of thing where like the Crypt Keeper is Tourette'sing, puns. And he's, they made one eyeball bigger than the other. He looks like, he just looks shell-shocked.
It's the best thing.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
It brought me back to life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was so good.
Death. But I love what they did with it. But it's, now this multi-generational thing of Tales from the Crypt is really just a continuation of what the comic book was. And I think the success of the show really had a lot to do with the fact that they went way out of their way to try to emulate the comic book in every way they could. They even would pick as storyboards some of the comic books. They would use them as storyboards for the way that they would shoot the different frames of the show.
Yeah, like the thing from the grave, right? I think
Yeah.
I love how they match that. It's
You
so
go
great.
back and you look at those comic books. Those artists were so good,
Yeah.
and there isn't a horror movie out there that hasn't borrowed from that in some way.
Or even reached. Really, the ones who try to count, you can't get it quite exactly as good as the panel.
No.
Yeah. So
I think like
that drives me
Creep
nuts.
Show is the only thing that came close to that EC feel with the stories,
Yeah.
Yeah.
other than Tales from the Crypt. And I
The
loved how
comic book anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I loved how Tales from the Crypt, you always had a different celebrity guest every episode.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody did Tales from the Crypt for HBO back in the day. Like every major actor was on there.
Yeah.
It's insane.
We had big producers on the show. Joel Silver, Richard Donner. Joel Silver, Richard Donner did all the Lethal Weapon movies and the Matrix. And Joel produced Matrix and
Lost Boys too, right?
Lost Boys. I mean all that stuff. And Dick Donner, who was director of everything from Goonies to Superman to The Omen to whatever, and also directed some of my favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes. And of course, Bob Zemeckis. Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, and, did some of the most amazing episodes on Tales from the Crypt and was a producer on it. Walter Hill, 48 Hours, Warriors, Dreamscape,
It's the who's who. Really,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's
He was a producer and directed episodes of Tales from the Crypt. And David Giler, who was producer of Alien. So, I mean, these were the guys. And at first, they thought that the show probably wouldn't last past the first 3 episodes, which were directed by Dick Donner, Walter Hill, and Bob Zemeckis. And then we brought Gil Adler on, who had been producing Freddy's Nightmares and successfully doing it on the budget that you needed to be able to do that kind of show. Because nobody really wanted horror, on television that much at that time. They didn't think it was a widespread. Nobody walks out on me.
How dare you?
Damn you! And now they're on mass exodus. Anyway, Gil was good at being able to do it on that budget. So he came in and they were like, well, we're going to have to do this many pages a day. And he's like, well, what do we do with the second half of the day? You know, and so they were pretty amazing at making that show because people are go, how come Tales from the Crypt is on HBO Max? Well, they didn't own their shows back then. They gave you X amount of dollars to have it on their channel, and you retained rights to the show. But each season that you got picked up, you had to come up with more of the budget from somewhere else because you're the ones that were going to be selling it in syndication. So, you know, each year, you know, they were like, can you take a pay cut? I go, you're only paying me scale. What do you want? You want me to take a pay cut for scale? You know,
Can you chip in?
yeah, exactly.
We'll give you a free subscription to HBO.
Exactly. We give a free. Well, it was really funny because we were in a, you know, they did the first 3 episodes. They showed them like a movie in a theater, like a big premiere. And I remember there was maybe in the 8th row or whatever, there was a bunch of HBO execs, and I was sitting two rows behind them. And these 2 guys are watching in between us, and the one guy goes, oh, this is great television. The guy goes, it's not television, it's HBO. Yeah. And you see the 2 execs go like that, like, oh my God. And it literally became one of their catchphrases on HBO. It's not television, it's HBO.
I love the parodies they did. So many sketch shows with that. It's
Oh
great
my
stuff.
God. For the Crypt Keeper sequences?
Yeah, those are so good.
Oh yeah, so good, man. You know, I mean, because I had been a stand-up comic and done a bunch of sitcoms and stuff, you know. Eventually they were like, you know, we could really start like interjecting you into this character more and more. He's like, oh, you came from the theater. We're going to do you as Stanley Kowalski doing a streetcar named Desire, you know. The Crypt Keeper in a torn up T-shirt with his bony little arms going, Stella! Stella! You know.
I'd
a
pay
lot
good
of
money
fun.
to see the Crypt Keeper just like put into several movies. It's different characters. Why not? The Muppets do it.
Yeah. We wanted to do it. We wanted to do a talk show with him at one point, you know, which I thought would just be great. Just the Crypt Keeper interviewing other horror characters, you know. It'd just be so much fun.
Had you
Somebody
done
make that
scary
happen.
voices?
I'm sorry?
Were you known for doing scary voices, or was that your first time tackling a
You know, literally, it was my first professional voiceover job. I mean, I had been doing voiceover from the time I was in high school with my buddy. We used to do the morning announcements. We'd be like, the following morning announcement brought to you by a grant from the Mobile Corporation. You know, we do a, you know, takeoff on Masterpieces Theater, you know, and do, you know, all these different characters. We'd imitate the teachers and all that stuff. And, you know, in fact, we did like the yearbook drive. So in the back of the yearbook, there was like a 2-page picture of with the donators of the 2 of us at the microphone, you know. And so it wasn't like it was foreign to me, but as an actor, you know, I had wanted to be a theater actor, and I moved to New York with my first off-Broadway show, which closed after 3 weeks, you know, and I found myself street performing in front of the Metropolitan Museum to survive. And, you know, I would do the occasional theater, which paid $650. Well, I think my first off-Broadway show paid $175 a week in the 80s. I mean, even that was like, you couldn't even feed yourself in New York, living in a paper box, you know. And so theater, I found out very quickly, theater was not the way to make a living, even if you were successful at it. And then I got an off-Broadway show called 3 Guys Naked from the Waist Down. Which I know, it sounds like a gay review in the Village, right? But was about stand-up comics. Think Dreamgirls is a musical about stand-up comics. Think Dreamgirls, but with stand-up comics. And it starred Scott Bakula, who was terrific in the play, and myself, and a guy named Jerry Colker, who had not only written the piece, but had starred in Chorus Line on Broadway and that kind of thing. And I played this very dark, suicidal comic, you know, who would, like Andy Kaufman-ish type character. I would come out and like hang myself and record it and then walk off stage, you know, stuff like that. And I did all these voices and characters in you know, as the part. And people started to think that I was a stand-up comic because of the character, and I got invited to go on to Star Search in their first season as a stand-up comic, and wound up getting into the semifinals, beating Rosie O'Donnell in the semifinals, and then beating Sinbad in the finals, and winning $100,000. And I really had no act.
God, I feel like I saw that.
You probably did. It just was like, that kid's weird. Look what he's doing. Because I didn't really have an act. I would just come out and do I did like the Wizard of Oz in 2.5 minutes, you know? As coroner, I must concur, I thoroughly examined her. We represent the lollipop gear, you know. What's them? What's them? That's the castle of the Wicked Witch. Oh, Dorothy's in that awful place. Oh, I hate to think of her in that, you know, stuff like that.
That's amazing.
And I just kept winning. So then they're like, "You're going to open for Tom Jones in Vegas. You've just won Star Search." And I was like, "I can't open for Tom Jones in Vegas." They're like, "Why not?" I go, I got no fucking act. I've been making this shit up as I go along. Every time I win, I have to come up with another 2.5 minutes. So I got myself into the clubs and I started putting together this act. And because it was, I had no jokes, I based my act on a guy who was addicted to television. And I could switch channels on myself, and I'd go like into Star Trek, and I'd go into Wild Kingdom, and then I'd go into, The Wizard of Oz, all this stuff. And eventually, I'm doing Evening at the Improv, and I'm headlining on the road in these comedy clubs, and really wasn't my gig, but that's what I was doing, and that's what everybody knew me as. And so that's how I started getting sitcoms and stuff. But because of that, people knew that I did all these voices and characters. And my first series was on HBO called First and 10. Some of you might remember First and 10, or at least some of you guys who are horny teenagers and see titties on TV. Because that's HBO was the first network to start doing that on TV. And Mom, I'm watching a football show.
It's not TV though.
That's right. It's HBO.
You beat me to it.
So they already knew me on that show, and asked me to come audition for Tales from the Crypt, and that really was my first, not only voiceover gig, but my first real horror thing. Even though I was really into horror as a kid, I mean, I loved all the Universal horror monster movies. I think Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein is still my favorite, probably my favorite, at least horror comedy. But that really opened the door. I immediately got like the best voiceover agent in Hollywood, and I'm still with them since 1989.
It shows. There's so many credits.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
And it's the amazing thing is too, it extends your career as an actor. I mean, you get to a certain age as an actor, and there's just not as many parts for you on camera, because of how you look, your age, the limitation of what you can play. I still get some parts in some movies and television and that kind of thing, but the voiceover work, I'm not typed out by anything except what I can't do. I've played men, women, kids, monsters, rabbits, raccoons, all kinds of creatures, and it's kept me at a very high level of work now into my 60s. Did I say that? Oh my God, I said it out loud. I'm in my 60s.
Cost you more roles.
That's it. It'll cost me more roles. He's a white 60-ish male. He can't work in our industry anymore. I'm sorry. Is that me that's feeding back? Am I talking too loud? Anyway,
okay.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's. I'm really grateful for the voiceover work, and of course, I have a good time doing it. I mean, I was the original voice of Deadpool. They're not going to hire me to play that in the movie, I just don't have the guns for it, But certainly was fun playing him, Yeah.
I think we got time for 2 questions
Great.
from the audience.
I would love that.
Let me
Anybody
run
have a
down
good
there and
question?
see. Go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question for John. All right, coming your way.
Yes, sir.
Coming your way.
What a good-looking crowd.
Hey, John.
Hey.
Let me get this out of my system first. Oh my God, it's the voice of the Crypt Keeper. He's talking to me. Oh my God. It's Deadpool, the original voice. Oh my God, what got it? Okay, now that that's over, I got a question for you.
Sure.
So I might be one of the few people in this entire convention that would think to ask you this question. Actually, I asked you this the other day. So, two-part question. You might want to answer the first part or the second part first because you get it out of the way, and you could probably answer it with one sentence or even one word. So the question I got for you is: you did a show called Johnny Time. What is
Johnny
the
Time.
story behind that? And the second part of the question is there any way to get it? Because as far as I can tell, it's not just lost media, it's forgotten media as well. Because if you get on IMDb, you can find a listing of the
That's
show.
kind of on me because I could probably go into IMDb and make sure it winds
there's
up
a listing
there.
for the show, but there's no listing of the episodes except for like one, and I know there's more than one.
Well, shame on me for it not being there because first of all, it was my own series that I created and got on the air, which is not an easy thing to happen in anybody's career. But Johnny Time was my version of Pee-wee's Playhouse. It was a kid show. It was originally conceived to be a show within a sitcom where I had a regular sitcom, but on the side he had like done this kid show out of his garage. Like if anybody who ever saw Uncle Floyd in New York was like a really bad, kid show that was really for adults that the guy did out of his garage every Friday night in New York. But I was in a meeting with Viacom, which is a very big production company, and they started pitching me a kid show that they had some interesting idea for, but it was kind of half-baked. So I said, well, I have an idea for a kid show. And I got up on the table and I started performing Johnny Time. And Johnny Time was a show where I could pull a kid in through the TV set each week and they'd have some problem and I'd take them through some bizarre thing and I'd play all the other characters. And I had stock characters, a little kid who was always in the corner named Cyril, who was always had his own little philosophy and had a stunt guy, had all these different characters. And they loved the idea, and we wound up making the show and sold it to USA Network, which was trying to start their own. They were trying to start their own children's programming, and so we were the first show that we were going to be their flagship show. And the show was really well received. TV Guide said it was their favorite show of the year, and that kind of thing. But we wound up being the only kid show on the USA Network. They wound up not having the budget, or they were part owned by Universal and part owned by Viacom, and Universal got the rights to it and whatever, and so they didn't give them the budget for a kid show, any other kid show. So literally, I wound up like the only kid show on the USA Network. We were the lead-in to the WWF on Sunday mornings. So really what we wound up with was, stoners and kids and Sunday morning watching, which was really the perfect audience for it, because it was completely psychedelic. I had William White, who did the sets for Pee-wee's Playhouse, do our sets, but they think if Prince had done the sets. The sets were really cool and wild and brightly colored, and we had all this fun stock footage, and we had a blast making it. I got to hire all the people that I wanted. It was a really great experience. And to this day, it saddens us that we can't get a hold of the episodes to put on social media and that kind of thing because, one company gets bought by another and it winds up in the library of some other network and this kind of thing in some vault somewhere. And they're like, well, if you want to hire a lawyer to talk to us to make sure that you're allowed to have them or whatever, this kind of thing. It becomes so tough to even get a hold of the episodes. I mean, I have them on VHS tape, but I'm not going to post those. They're going to look like shit. So,
Yeah.
So we got time for one more question. We were going to do one of the dumb, silly questions we had.
Excellent.
We didn't have time to do them all because our next guest is about to come out. But this one we wanted to ask. You want to ask it, sir?
Yeah.
Sir Nathan.
So these are just silly questions.
Okay.
Silliest questions.
I'll answer them or not.
What is the scariest animal?
The scariest animal. Oh my God, it's got to be like one of the big cat animals, like a tiger or something, because I mean they literally the first thing they do is disembowel you. So
Is that
yeah,
what you
I think that's
least like
probably-
to come in contact with?
Qualifies.
yeah. What's that?
Is that the least, like, that's the one you would not want to be around?
That's the one I would not want to be around. If I have a dream, I live in the mountains near Malibu, where they have bobcats and mountain lions, and I've seen some of those up close and personal. I was like, that's scary enough. I don't think I'd want to see like a 350-pound tiger, coming at me. You're gone. It's just that fast,
Well, we'll pray no tiger encounters.
Yeah.
Thank you for being out here.
I did see a tiger in the elevator, by the way.
There was. We'll let you get back to your table. I appreciate you taking the time.
Hey,
Thank you
Got
so
any
much,
more
John.
One more stupid question?
Do we have? You want to do
Best
one
sandwich.
quickie?
What, my best sandwich?
Yeah.
My best sandwich? God, corned beef on rye, marble rye with sauerkraut and some good spicy mustard, I think. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good choice.
That's
You
a
got to go
good
to
one.
Izzy's then.
Yeah. Hey, thank you guys. You're in for a treat.
Be sure to visit John at his table. Thank you
you.
so much, John, for being here.
The
Appreciate
pleasure
it.
is all mine. Thank you guys for coming.
Coming out next is a legend in cinema, in horror cinema, all cinema.
He's a legendary even in hell.
And just a fucking nice guy.
The Hell Priest himself, Pinhead, Doug Bradley.
Thanks for taking the time to come out here, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Doug, so much.
Not at all. Hello, guys. Thank you for the welcome. Oh. A legend in my own lunchtime.
So how you doing? It's been
Good. How are you?
a minute.
Good.
It's been busy.
Yeah. You're doing something right here. Jesus Christ. I've had to send someone out to get more prints done.
I heard.
These
I
people are
heard.
fucking buying everything. It's crazy.
That's a good problem.
It's never happened to me before. I mean, I pack normal numbers, and there's one print I have that is always like my bellwether, which at a very, very busy show will sell out Saturday afternoon. It sold out last night, and I suddenly thought, what the fuck is going on here? It's fantastic. You guys are wonderful. People always come and say to me, to all of us, celebrities, actors, whatever, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for. And I always say, well, that's not the point. Thank you for coming, because if you guys don't make the effort, and as you did in shitty weather yesterday, if you guys don't make the effort, these things don't happen. They don't work without you. We sit at our tables and stare at carpet for a weekend without you guys. It's down to you that these things are as successful as they are. And I'm blown away. I mean, Guy told me this morning he drove 13 hours from Alabama to see me. I told him I wouldn't cross the street to piss on me if I was on fire. Told him he was out of his mind, but thanked him very much as well. It's astonishing. You are the most loyal fan base anybody could hope to have.
We're happy to have you.
Wonderfully said.
You've been doing conventions for a little bit.
A few years.
What's your favorite question to answer on a Q&A panel?
Jesus Christ. April 1989, I did my first convention. Fangoria Weekend of Horrors. in
They
LA.
recorded that for a video, didn't they?
I've no idea. I don't know. Okay. And I don't think there's been a year since then when I haven't done one. So whatever that is, 34 years.
What was
next
that
month.
like? Was that like? I would imagine that was a pretty small show in the beginning.
Not really. No,
Did it blow up right
the Fango
out?
shows
Wow.
were pretty cool, and I mean they're always mainly built around the Q&As.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to expect. I had been invited to a convention. I imagined, something rather like this on a grand scale. People giving profound and knowledgeable speeches on the subject of horror and horror cinema. I had no idea how this would work. And the first morning, Tony Randall, who directed Hellbound, which had just been released, called me and said, it was my first visit to the States, and he said, this is your first morning in LA, I'm taking you to breakfast in Beverly Hills. And I said, okay, cool, so we did that. Came back to the hotel, there's a line wrapped around the hotel. We're walking to the hotel, and I can see people in line doing that. I assumed that they're pointing at Tony. Because, well, I'm in Hollywood, right? And he's a director in Hollywood, right? So they know who he is. And we went into the hotel, and I said, well, I want to just go up to my room for 15. I'll meet you back down here, and then let's find out what's going on here. It took me nearly half an hour to get into the elevator. That was the first time that I experienced, Mr. Bradley, Mr. Bradley, Mr. Bradley. Take a picture with you in the days of disposable cameras. But your question, the best question, wow, I don't know really. I should remember these things, but mine goes blank. The standard is how long did the makeup take? My favorite line always is when you're eating and somebody says to you, I hate to disturb you while you're eating. Then don't fucking do it.
You've always been really good with the fans. I remember seeing you 15 years ago at a show in Chicago, and it was one of those same kind of shows where you were supposed to go on stage, do a Q&A, sign, and then stay in a hotel. And you were like, I'm not staying in a fucking hotel. I want to go down there and see the fans. You did.
Wow, good for me. I'm surprised, but pleased to hear it. I remember there was one Fango show it was theoretically Dallas, but it was not. We were in Plano, which is just down the road from Waco. I mean, it was a very nice convention center, but you came out of the convention center and right across the road, there were fields with cows in. And there weren't very many people at that show. And Kane, Hodder, and I were scheduled to do panels at the same time. And we were kind of in adjoining rooms. So if you imagine this room split in half, and I had like a dozen people, and Kane had a dozen people, and we sort of popped our heads around the divider at some point and decided we'd do a joint panel. So Kane invited all his people to come over to my side of the room, and we did it together.
For a minute there, I thought you were going to say that you and Kane Hodder went cow tipping. Honestly, I could see him getting into that.
No cows were interfered with, to my knowledge, anyway.
With you having done this so long, like, what are some of the biggest, growth you've seen in like conventions, like the different changes over the years, like?
Well, the first change was with Fango shows. You did your Q&A, and then you sat down to sign. All I had was a pen. I didn't bring anything with me. Nobody did. And fans brought stuff to you to sign. Never charged a penny. How about that? It also meant there was a great relationship between the fans and the vendors, because the fans went to the vendors, and the vendors all brought stuff relating to the actors who were invited to the convention. The fans went to the vendors and bought stuff and brought it to us to sign. But we never charged you. That just didn't happen. So I started, and I remember at some point in the 90s seeing actors arriving with suitcases, with photographs. My first reaction when I saw that was, what the fuck? I'm an actor, not a storekeeper. I'm not having any of that. Then I started getting invited to conventions where it was clear that this was the thing. This was just what happened. I think Chiller was one of the first I did where I had to sort out getting photographs for myself. For the longest time, I never charged to sign people's own items. And I remember a kid who came to, I think it was that not Dallas show. And he had a lot of stuff for me to sign, and he had come down from somewhere up in the northeast corner of the country. So he traveled a long way. And at the end of the weekend, I got driven back to the airport to get my flight back to London, still lived in the UK then, and I bumped into him. And I said hi, and he had been at the airport all day, and he didn't have a flight until the evening. And he'd been kicked out of his motel because he couldn't afford to stay in the convention hotel, even at convention rates. And he didn't have any money. So I gave him some money to get a meal. And that, I kind of remembered him for a long time afterwards, because I was always aware that, you pay for me to come here, you pay for my hotel, you guys pay, your gas or your flights or whatever to get here, you pay for your hotel rooms, you pay to get into this thing, you stand for hours at my table, you've already paid money to buy your own item, and my reasoning was, why should I now charge you extra money to scribble on it? So for a long time, I charged nothing for own items. Then I started to get kind of rumbles around the room, that it was clear that people were saying to other actors, well, Doug Bradley doesn't charge anything for own items. To which I think they were getting the reply, well, fuck Doug Bradley. I do. so then I charged $5. I mean, this is like 30 years ago, 30 years ago now, but yeah. And when I first started doing it, I was charging $10 for a black and white 10 by 8 and $20 for a color, because I figured the color were more valuable. So I think that's one of the main changes that I've seen. The other is simply the quantity of them, the quality of them, and how increasingly more and more and more how well attended they are across the board. It's rare now that I go to a show that is really very quiet.
It's got to be another aspect that's kind of weird is we started our magazine in 2005.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation with Aaron here about whether or not we were quarterly back then. We were deciding, is there enough toys to do a toy section every issue? And now we can't even feature all the toys, and we're bi-monthly.
Yeah.
Or collect them.
So the volume of Pinhead merchandise alone's got to be staggering today.
Now it has, and it's increasingly the range of the artwork is amazing. And almost every show now I'm seeing something else new for the first time. And obviously action figures and Funko Pops. Can you imagine if someone brought you the idea of a Funko Pop? I think I'd say, are you crazy? This looks nuts. This is kind of it's very cute, it's very twee, but the horror fans will never go for this. I think I would have said. And I wish I'd kept count of the number of those that I've signed now, because it's colossal. And the amount of money those guys must be making because I'm aware that, you know, I'm a dot in the horror universe of Funko Pops, and the horror universe is a dot in the entire Funko Pops universe. Yeah. It's staggering, Jesus. But you know, so yeah, that's
we'll
that's
re-wall the
that's been
cities
massive growth.
with them in 2,000 years, probably, right?
The archaeologists will be digging them up
Yeah.
and wondering votive offerings to the gods. Yeah. Back in the day, there was only one figure of Pinhead, which was the Screaming model.
Two versions, two or three versions.
I think eventually there were 3 versions, and they were expensive as well. Screaming models.
And you end up painting them yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Uphill both ways.
And in fact, I think it was a Fangoria show in Boston. Again, this is like, I think, 1990, 1991. I was asked in a Q&A, did I have one of the Screaming models? And I said, no, I didn't. Next morning at breakfast, a family walked by and said, we hate to interrupt you while you're eating, Mr. Allen. You said yesterday in your Q&A that you didn't have a Screaming doll. And I said, no, that's right. And they said, you do now. Enjoy your breakfast. And off they went. Generosity is another thing. Acquire presents.
Speaking of generosity and fans, maybe we should open up
Yeah, absolutely.
questions for some of the audience members.
You want to do a silly
Didn't even
one
have to
as long as
ask.
way
Hands
down?
already went up.
I know, right?
Yeah, silly question while he's doing that. I'll ask you the same one, John Kassir. Best sandwich?
Best sandwich. Sandwiches are a different thing in America to England. I do like a good grilled cheese sandwich, and I've discovered that air fryers make a very good grilled cheese sandwich. I like a cheese and Branston pickle sandwich. That's an English thing. That is a very English thing. I get my Branston pickle. I order it online. I still get my Branston pickle. A good strong cheddar cheese and Branston pickle. Can't beat it.
Sounds delicious.
Mr. Bradley, it's an honor. You're such an amazing actor. And first, I have to say, you have the best dialogue in horror. Like Pinhead, just his lines, they're so poetic, but horrifying and scary. But I wanted to
Nothing to do with me, but yeah, I was
it
very
does
lucky.
because it's
Yep.
also your delivery of those lines. The way you deliver
Thank
them
you.
is perfect. But I wanted to talk to you about something most people probably aren't aware of, but you did the voiceover for Kurt Barlow for
yes,
this Salem's Lot, and A, it's amazing, and B, I just want to know, how did you go about that? How did you come up with your version of the character? Because the previous version, what most people see, Toby Hooper's, he's quiet, but in the book, he actually has dialogue.
it is so weird to me. We're talking about changes through conventions. Here's another classic example of this. Excuse me. That Salem's Lot, well, I'll take you back before Hellraiser. I was working in Provincial Repertory Theatre in the UK. And I was working at a theatre in Leicester, and I was in a couple of productions directed by a young director called Adrian Bean, who I got on very well with. So I can't even remember now exactly what year we're talking about, but we're in the 90s, I think. And Adrian had gone to join the BBC. So this is just a BBC drama. The BBC are brilliant and have always done lots of drama. This was the first radio adaptation of Salem's Lot, and Aid just contacted me and said, would you be interested in doing this? Barlow the Vampire. And I said, of course, absolutely. And it's a great experience. I've only really done 2 radio plays, but I love it. You know, when you're talking to someone and you're walking along, we're supposed to be walking along a path through dead leaves, and as you're standing at the microphones, the 2 of you talking, there are technicians at your feet, and what they used to do was spools of tape from tape machines, and they'd be rustling the tape as you're talking to simulate dried leaves. And Salem's Lot was great because, of course, there was a lot of openings, and they're doing all that in real time. None of it's added afterwards. So they've got these doors with squeaky hinges, and they're opening that, and they're rattling chains and then slamming things shut. It's while you're just standing there in tennis shoes and jeans and t-shirt. They're creating the atmosphere around you. So it goes out on the BBC, and that's it. Back in the day, the BBC were notoriously bad at even keeping stuff. Suddenly, about maybe 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, people started asking me about Salem's Lot. To the extent that I initially was saying I wasn't in Salem's Lot, because I assumed they were talking about the TV adaptation. And then I thought, oh shit, you're talking about the BBC radio? How the turned up on YouTube. Somebody got a hold of the recording of it and put it up on YouTube. So
That's how I heard it.
right? Yeah, and that, there's nothing you've done, even the things you would prefer that people had forgotten that you did. There's no hiding place now. Everything is there, and everything survives and lives and exists. It's quite amazing.
Everything.
Thank
Aaron,
you very
grab the right behind you. I'll ask you another silly question. What's the most used app on your phone?
Sky News. Well, that's apart from messages and WhatsApp. I don't do social media, so none of that. I've never, ever had my own Facebook page. Ever. Never. I saw a T-shirt once which had the Facebook logo, but it was an H instead of an F, and then it read, "How about we all leave each other the fuck alone for 5 minutes?" I'd sign up for that one. I mean, I have a Facebook fan page, and we use Twitter and Instagram and so forth. But I don't do any of that, so I never use those apps. Otherwise, it's the boring stuff. It's the weather, Sky News, BBC News, Apple News, football, soccer. Not that silly game you lot play. I've tried with that thing. I don't get it. I want to start a campaign to have it rebranded Throwball.
Throwball.
Because it's got nothing to do with feet, so that the beautiful game can have its name back. So those, really.
I don't think that'll stick.
And cricket, but I'm
Nathan's such a big football fan. He blushed when you were like, "That's not football." His ears turned red.
No, I understand. I tried. Yeah. What's the team? The Tigers? Yeah.
Yep.
They're in Cincinnati, though.
Close enough.
I
I
love
thought
you,
they were the
Doug.
Bengal Tigers.
There-
Okay. All right. Okay. I do like baseball. You like baseball?
I used to.
Okay.
I used to.
It's a sore spot in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Silly.
We were good once.
Yeah, we were
Okay.
great once. We were great.
hey, I live in Pittsburgh. So the losingest team in franchise history, I think.
That was a nice change of pace, though.
It's a lovely ballpark. But
I don't know where Aaron is.
I'm right here. I'm over here. You can't see me. I'm on the side.
Throw the question.
I'm here. All right. I got one more question for you, Doug.
Yeah, a few years back, I'm going to say it was either Buffalo or Pittsburgh. I had the opportunity to work with you with Blackcraft Wrestling.
Oh, cool. Yes.
I was one of the asshole brothers that kept fucking with you the whole
Right.
time there.
Yeah, okay.
So while we were cutting our promos, you had stopped us and you had given us some tips on how to deliver our promos. And we had an altercation later that night, and you punched me in the face, whatnot. But I just want to say thank you for setting us down and explaining to us delivery for promos and how to get more out of our promos.
Okay.
Acting coach.
Wow. What an asshole. Jesus. No, you're the asshole, right? Yeah, no. Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting.
You wrestled?
No, I didn't wrestle. Yeah, I was. So the idea was that Blackcraft were creating wanted to do their own wrestling, and Bobby Shabansky from Blackcraft approached me. Would I be like the MC? But the idea was like a cult. So I was the head of the cult, and I had to create this character. Literally, boom, we're doing a photo shoot tomorrow. Do it. Okay. He's called the Preacher, and he's going to look like him, actor's name that I've completely forgotten in Night of the Hunter.
Robert.
Robert Mitchum. Yes. Because I had my grandfather's frock coat, and I thought I could put that together. So we did. It was relatively short-lived, but it was a great deal of fun. Any thoughts that I used to have that wrestling was fake went away. I mean, I know it's fake to the extent that we know they're not really hitting each other all the time, and they know who's going to win. But once you've sat at close proximity and seen people hitting each other with step ladders, and watched someone swallow dive off a balcony above
you don't
your
wanna
head
do that.
and land on top of two wrestlers on the floor. That was you? That was at Pittsburgh then. That was the Burning Bridges. Okay, right, okay.
Wow.
And I've forgotten the name of the actor who won the ladder contest. He had to get to the top of the ladder, and there was like a chalice. Matthew, yes. And he won, but the chalice was in a plastic box. And he decided that this was a breakaway box. So rather than open the box to get to the chalice, he smashed the chalice off the box off his head and split his head open. And then the idea was that I had to get up from my throne where I'd been watching proceedings and go down and get into the ring to pour some shit, magic stuff, I don't know what, into the chalice to welcome him into the cult. And I'm standing there looking at this guy with blood pouring down him. And it was a weird moment because I was kind of thinking, I'm not unfamiliar with this, standing in front of people covered in blood. But I'm usually safe in the knowledge that it's fake blood. This isn't. This is real blood. So, not fake. I love the Blackcraft Wrestling T-shirt that says on the back, "God is fake, wrestling is real."
Want to do one more question?
Yeah, one more question. Show hands.
Fake question first.
Yeah.
I had one on here. What was it? Have you ever asked someone for their autograph?
Oh, yes. Yes, I have. I stood in line, oh, God, to get Tippi Hedren's autograph. She had no idea who I was, and I didn't say anything. I just thanked her profusely. That Chiller show I mentioned, the first time I took photographs, I was sitting next to Sarah Karloff. And I was a bit blown away by that. And so Sarah, I also asked to sign one of the pictures of her with her father, whom I revere and venerate. And a lot of people, and we have our, we've had photo ops with a lot of people over the years. We have them all up on the wall at home, so there's a lot of them. Steph's been very excited recently to meet both Pee-wee and John Lovitz, who are big heroes of hers, and Meatloaf. Shortly before he died, she ugly cried in my arms after meeting Pee-wee. She held it together until she'd walked away from him and then collapsed, because it's been her favorite movie for forever. And I still have fanboy moments. I still do have moments where I think, fuck, oh my God. And people, fans are sometimes a bit jittery, and they apologize and say, I'm very nervous, because, I remember once, I think it was in Florida, I looked up from my table, there's a girl standing in front of me in floods of tears, and I said, are you okay? Are you all right? She said, yes. I said, are you sure? She said, yes. You don't understand. And I said, no, but if you tell me, maybe I can. She said, it's you.
I didn't do anything.
But I always say to people, look, if I had the opportunity to stand in line to get Peter Cushing's autograph, that would have been me. When I met Ringo Starr, my legs were jelly and my tongue and my brain disconnected, and I talked gibberish to him. I did. So, it's universal.
All right, Aaron. All right. Last one.
You have described well how I feel right now. So, I was wondering what? I was wondering which of the sequels are your least favorite, like either to film or to watch, of the Hellraiser ones.
Well, I'll let you into a clue. I don't really watch them. I've maybe seen Hellraiser start to finish 4 times. I've seen bits of it many times, from introducing the film or, clips on TV or whatever, but I don't sit at home watching my movies. I prefer to watch other people's movies. I think we kept our heads above water fairly well through the series, through the 8 movies. It wasn't helped by the fact that after Bloodline, we did 3 movies that were not original screenplays. They were pre-existing screenplays that were tweaked to make them into Hellraiser movies, which I think is a bit lazy, to be honest, and not necessary, but they did. The one sequel that I think just doesn't really work is Inferno, the 5th movie. And I didn't like the tone of it. I talked to Scott Derrickson, the director, who God knows has gone on to, so he knows what he's doing. But he said, look, if you want to rewrite what we've written for Pinhead, then please do, because that was the hardest thing we did. I only had 2 scenes. And I did slightly, but I also said to him I wanted to change what Pinhead was saying, particularly at the end with the final confrontation with Craig Sheffer, with the detective. Your flesh is killing your spirit and all of that, which that felt to me like Pinhead, like he was saying, this is a bad thing and this is a good thing, and the bad thing is killing the good thing, and that's a bad thing. And this is your Uncle Pinhead saying, be nice to your mom and dad, and look both ways before you cross the street and remember to go to church, and I'll see you next week. And I said to him, he's moralizing. And although Pinhead obviously deals in morals, he never moralizes. He's never told anybody, you've been very naughty and you should have lived your life better. And because you've been a very, very naughty girl, I'm going to tear your soul apart. That's not his
He's
thing.
also never black and white.
But
Like it's like he's always kind of like, hey, you never know what I'm thinking.
Well,
Heaven and hell
yeah,
together.
and he wants to engage in conversation, but it's the dirty little secrets in the cobweb corners of your head
Yeah.
and your heart that he's interested in. But he was prepared to let me change the language, but not the content. So we disagreed on that. But, end of the day, I'm just the actor. Sign on the dotted line and flap your lips when told. It's basically the job.
I always heard celebrities say they don't watch their films, but we've been in publishing long enough. I never read a book or a magazine after I finish because I can't do anything more to it.
Right.
And I was like, I slowly got the idea. I was like, I'm curious if that's why you don't like watching something that you...
It's a combination of things. I mean, I do watch, and I think you have to. It's easier with Pinhead because it isn't me, which makes a difference. I think you do have to learn to self-critique. You have to learn to be self-critical. So I think it is important to look at your performances. But you can learn from it, but there's nothing you can do about it. And there are lots of moments in the Hellraiser films that I've looked at and thought, the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing that? That's ridiculous. No. And so there's lots of moments that I would change. Delivery of lines that I think is completely wrong. But, it's done.
That's the only way you get to where you're at. It's making all those iterations of everything and refining everything and getting better and better and better.
But you make decisions in the moment.
Yeah.
There's one very good example is, do I look like someone who cares what God thinks? I let him get angry. This was a bit of a battle for me sometimes because Pinhead is a very constrained character. The one note I got from Clive when we first started filming Hellraiser first scenes, I got one note from him because he was excited out of his head because he's looking through the camera for the first time and seeing his creation. And he kept saying to me, this is fantastic, this is wonderful, it looks great, everything is fantastic, do less. I said, okay. So I thought about taking it down a notch, and he came back to me and said, it is, you have no idea, this is wonderful. Do less. Okay? Do less. And it's very difficult because you reach the point as an actor where you feel as though you're just standing still delivering your lines. And that's exactly what Clive was telling me to do. And what he was saying was, you don't need to sell this. Because you standing there delivering these lines flat out with that makeup on a screen that big is going to scare the crap out of people. That was the lesson I had to learn, but it's very hard as an actor. You want to break out, you want to do something. So I let myself get angry with that line. I snapped it out. Do I look like someone who cares what God thinks? And when I saw it, I thought, no, dead wrong. Just relax on it, take a pause and just look at whoever you're talking to and just, do I look like someone who cares what God thinks? Would have been far more powerful. I got it completely wrong. I apologize.
I appreciate you. We're going to let you get back to signing. We appreciate everyone for being here.
Thank you so much,
you guys. Thank you.
Please be sure to stop by Doug's table.
That was fantastic. Thank you guys so much for coming. HorrorHound
Thanks,
Radio.
everybody. Please check out HorrorHound Radio and HorrorHound Magazine. Be sure to stop by our merch table, too, in the main vendor hall. We have a lot of really cool stuff. We have a HorrorHound Tiki mug. We have the new Halftone Horrors book, which Nathan wrote, and a bunch of other awesome HorrorHound stuff. So please stop by and see us. Thank you all.